Our conversation with Erick Lauber is brought to you by Marcus & Mack, a law firm representing injured people. He's a faculty member. He is a director of the Marti Institute at IUP as well. He is Erick Lauber. Joins us this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Todd.
Hey, we've got interesting and exciting news, I think, in terms of not only opioids, but the battle against addictive substances altogether.
Right.
And they come in two forms, and you're involved in both of them.
I am actually in this particular case.
Yeah.
Yeah, one is we just recently received a grant from the governor's office through the Department of Drug and Alcohol Programs. This is federal money that's been gone through them to launch a new prevention campaign on campus. So we're specifically targeting both students and faculty and staff with drug prevention, particularly opioid prevention project, which we're going to run for the next year.
So when students get back next week, are they going to notice something right away, or does it take some time to roll it out?
That's our plan, is to get some stuff out there right away.
Oh, yeah.
We just got word this week that the grant was received, so we're launching. We're going full-time now to get everything out there as fast as we can.
So what are they going to find?
Well, one thing is my co-partner, Ann Sesty, she's been working on campus for many, many years in the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Other Drug Office, is going to launch workshops, speaker series. She's bringing on campus some certified family recovery specialists that we're going to meet with students who might have family members who've been affected by the opioid crisis. So there's going to be a lot more hands-on, a lot more out there community outreach on campus. And then I'm going to be in charge of the media, the prevention materials. We're going to do things with IUP TV, with WIUP FM, with the Pen, obviously. With the Beak and the daily emails. We're going to do things with Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, any way we can to get to the students and to the faculty and staff.
Yeah, of course, you and Ann and so many others at IUP have been involved in this this fight for many, many years, and it's always been an issue on campus, just as it is in communities all across Western Pennsylvania, the nation as a whole. This is a fight that never goes away. But does it improve? Does the picture improve at IUP, and has it been improving for any period of time?
You know, that's hard to say, because as I listen to folks like Vince McCurry from the Open Door and people who are in the treatment profession for many, many years, they talk about waves, cycles. And so we have continually had cycles of this being a predominant drug for a while, and then it kind of dies off because people kind of wake up to it, and then something else comes along. So I think college campuses have always struggled with alcohol and marijuana. But we're very, very nervous about the prescription opioids that everybody's aware now have been flooding the market now for a few years. And, of course, heroin and fentanyl are now in our communities, and they affect our college students just like they do people off campus. So that's a big fear that we still haven't seen the worst of it.
There's always something, and there's always something new out there
that's
becomes
what scares
a threat.
me. Yeah, if I could just take a second to explain to people that there's a system in your brain that prevents many chemicals from getting to your brain. It's called the blood-brain barrier. So a lot of things that circulate in your bloodstream don't get there. But over the centuries, we've accidentally found a few things that do. So we smoke a plant, somehow we feel high. We do some complicated food chemistry, and we get alcohol, and so we drink and we feel drunk. But nowadays, chemistry is so easy. People can just make stuff in the lab. And people are making things. People are making methamphetamine right here in our county. People from all walks of life are making fentanyl, which is a drug that is so much more powerful than even heroin and other opioids. We're going to have to train the next generation to be very, very careful about chemistry, because a lot more drugs get into your brain now than ever before.
Yeah, one of the interesting things about that to me is we talk about, sophisticated labs. There's nothing sophisticated about a lot of this stuff. It's crude. But it's effective.
It's unfortunately effective. So, our county has seen a lot of what we call one-pot methamphetamine labs that have been discovered and busted. And I give my hat off to the state police and all the local police forces that are trying to stay on top of that. But we can't arrest our way out of this particular crisis. We've got to do a lot more in prevention.
All right. So, with that in mind, the other bit of exciting news that we have is a study finally published that was done over basically 4 counties, Indiana County being one of them, and you were one of the lead authors of the study. Right,
yeah. I'm joined by Victor Garcia, who is the director of Marti, and Alex Hackert and Christian Vaccaro and Melissa Swager and many other students, and the Applied Research Lab. We interviewed 50 drug users or ex-users, and we interviewed 50 frontline people like police, treatment, EMS, ER people and ambulance folks, and found a lot of different things. The report's available online if people go to the Marti, search Marti on the IUP website. One of the things that I think people thought was occurring is this Narcan was being misused. So Narcan or naloxone, as the generic name, is this, in most cases, a nasal spray that you can give somebody who's overdosed on opioids and bring them back. And there's been a lot of stigma. There's been a lot of misinformation about how Narcan is being spread around here. We're big advocates of getting Narcan in the hands of anybody because we discovered that Narcan is not being used logically by the users. They're not saying to themselves, well, I'll put Narcan here on the shelf in case I happen to overdose. Nobody is waiting around for a partner to take drugs and then I've got Narcan ready to go. Those are called Narcan parties, and we just did not find any evidence of that. Instead, it's just bystanders. A family member, a friend who comes upon somebody who's overdosed, happens to know where to get Narcan quickly and saves their lives. And of course, EMS personnel are fantastic at it, and they've been administering Narcan for years. That's just one of the many findings that we put out in the report.
Yeah. But some of the other key findings are, I just find them interesting because they talk about, as you were saying a couple of moments ago, how the drugs change. And how the methods change by which people are obtaining them. But the fact is that there are people still out there. And you've said recently, often actually, here in Indiana in the Morning, that, behaviors only change when people want to change them.
Right.
And one of the things about drugs is, there oftentimes are people who just don't want to change those behaviors. They don't see the incentives, the motivation for doing that.
Once you're caught up in this, and no one tries to become addicted. I mean, it's a gradual rewiring, as I say, of kind of the deep parts of the brain. Once you're caught up in that, you're not thinking, how do I stop this right now? You're thinking, how do I get to the next dose? When you're deep into addiction. Now, people can get in recovery, and they have fantastic lives after that. I've met many, many people. But we really don't have a fundamentally good understanding yet of the deep details of addiction. We just know that it grabs you and it takes you in a place that's really dark and that you don't really want to go. But once you're there, you find it very hard not to want that next dose.
Take me back into the study and something that either surprised you or actually reaffirmed what you might have suspected that really pops out at you when you consider the report as a whole.
Well, one of the things, too, that I'll bring up, first was the compassion that the police and the EMS actually were exhibiting. A lot of the folks that we interviewed said, there's a lot of good people doing a lot of good work, and it's very emotionally draining for those folks to come across these overdoses over and over and over again. But also the fact that the user community was responding to the fentanyl crisis, but in a very haphazard kind of way. The fentanyl hit our community a few years ago, and that was the main drug that's been causing a lot of deaths. It's a heroin derivative, if you will. The user community was starting to do some things to adapt, but it wasn't logical. It wasn't systematic. But this one user, for example, would ask the drug supplier, hey, do you think there's fentanyl in this? If you had any rumors about this particular batch. The next one would try a test dose to see if maybe it had fentanyl so they wouldn't die. And the next one, they were all trying something a little bit, but when you're in the throes of drug addiction, it isn't all logical. And I think that's one of the surprising findings is that the user community kind of adapted in a way. Now, unfortunately, our drug deaths have gone back up this past year. I think we're up back in the 30s again in Indiana County, which is pretty high. So we're not out of this. This is not over. We have a lot more chemistry coming into our systems.
So would you say then the user community is aware that there's danger, but think that there might be ways to override that danger? They just don't know what they are, so that becomes an experiment for them.
It kind of is. It's kind of like a user community itself is experimenting with ways to adapt to this. And that's natural for biological systems. I mean, ecological, biological, all of those sciences apply to humans as well as any other creature. So what we have is a threat to this ecological system, and this ecological system is trying to adapt to that. But that's what the brain does when you put chemicals into it. It adapts. And that's why you get tolerance and withdrawal symptoms and things like that. So it's all very complex, and we don't have all the answers yet.
Talking with Erick Lauber this morning in this study that was put together by some very, very interested and concerned parties at IUP and around the community. So where does the study go from here? It's obviously never complete.
Right.
So what are the applications that we can expect?
One of the things we're doing is, of course, we released it to the public, and it's on our website. We're writing up some science papers because there's some findings in there that we need to share with the wider scientific community. We're actually doing a follow-up study on families right now. Michelle Swager is leading that, and we are trying to talk to the parents in particular, sometimes grandparents, who have to deal with these situations because their voices haven't been heard very loudly out there in the community or out in the science community. We obviously need to continue to think hard about Narcan and how we're going to get that in the hands of everybody that surrounds drug users, because that seems to be a critical variable to keeping these people alive. And unfortunately, the first overdose is not the trigger for them to go to treatment. That was another finding, is that sometimes it took multiple overdoses before they finally got to treatment.
Yeah.
And again, it's the illogic of drug addiction that causes that.
Yeah, it's amazing. Well, you've said it before too here that you're talking about chemical changes in the brain. Your brain is actually altered.
Right.
From its normal state when it is introduced to some of these substances, and it changes your behavior and maybe for a lifetime.
It's a lifetime illness. It is a condition that you don't necessarily just stop having, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're in active drug addiction the rest of your life. You can be in recovery for a long, long, long time. The rest of your life, you can be in what we call active recovery, meaning you're not taking those chemicals, you behave normally. Right, these people have jobs, they have families, they're upstanding members of the community. I love many of the people that I've met, but in active addiction is where the problems occur. Yeah. And these people need to get out of that into a long-term recovery program. Now, we have a lot of great support for that. The certified recovery specialists from the Indiana Armstrong Clarion Drug Alcohol Commission are fantastic. Anybody has any issues, they should call the crisis line here in Indiana.
Now, folks are interested in this report. How do they get access to it?
It's on our website. If they just go to the IEP website and search out Marti, M-A-R-T-I, it'll pop up pretty quickly. It's one of our most prominent links on that website right there. And we're happy to share with anybody with any questions or any comments with us. And then we have a big PDF. It's about 120 pages, so be prepared to sit back. And unfortunately, there's a lot of quotes in there which can be pretty emotional. So you should be ready to read some ththings that are truthful.
Be prepared. Erick, thank you so much.
Thank you, Todd.
He's Erick Lauber, and it is Indiana in the Morning, presented by First Commonwealth.